is going to come back to getting cells to patients faster. And so at Terumo Blood and Cell Technologies, we've been working on something called the 3-in-1 protocol. It basically allows users to use the Quantum Flex device, and it allows the activation, transduction, and expansion of cells all in one platform. So the less we can have operator input, open events, non-automated steps, if we can eliminate those and put everything into a single automated device, that will absolutely enable individuals to get their patients or their therapies quicker.
I think we're seeing a shift in preference in viral vector. Certainly AAVs falling a little bit out of favor, although I think there's still a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of development, real recent progress in Huntington's disease. I think that's very exciting. What I'm seeing, though, is that, interestingly enough, I think lentivirus is falling back into favor with applications like in vivo CAR. In vivo CAR2 is showing some very significant promise. There have been some big deals in that space. I'm thinking about Virica and Novartis, for example. So that's all very exciting. Although it in a way very much shifts the need towards manufacturing, because lentivirus is a little bit more challenging to produce in large quantities compared to AAV, for example. So manufacturing technologies are going to be something to watch out for in that space.
The Alliance for Regenerative Medicine have stated at this meeting yesterday that the expected CAGR over the next 5 years for cell and gene therapy is now at 50%. It's a really bold and very positive outlook. That's increased from a projection of 40% last year. What's also interesting, though, is a Global Data ran a recent study and said that confidence in the industry was actually at a relatively low level. But these two potentially conflicting views don't, because really the confidence in the industry is at assets that are a much earlier stage, and this is more preclinical assets. And hopefully once assets move through to marketing product, that will lift the whole industry, and that will increase confidence throughout all of the stages of development.
The biggest development I've seen in 2025 is really prevailing effect of collaboration. So he has really been very prominent for different players in the industry. Everybody from therapy manufacturers to platform manufacturers to investors and so forth, that they need to work together. We need to learn from each other. We need to share the knowledge, and we need to collaborate. So I think collaboration, for me, the reality of collaboration, realization of collaboration is a big topic for 2025.
It's the significant momentum around patient access initiatives, such as the one we're talking about today at the Mobile Leukapheresis Center. It's a way to activate more clinical sites and bring these therapies to more locations and more geographies into the community settings. Because I think that's the big rate limiter right now in this field. It is manufacturing capacity, it is testing, but it's also how many physicians are referring patients into these therapies and how many are actually able to receive them. The geographic differences and distances are really a barrier to access. So I think that's the biggest innovation this year.
I would say in 2025, we've seen the expansion of cell therapy, both in terms of cell types. For example, as a company, we're in macrophage cell therapy, but also across therapy areas. So out of hematology, out of oncology, into other therapeutic areas, which I think can have transformative benefits for patients.
In this climate, it's a bit hard to pick. There has not been a ton of excitement, but recently I think there's been transactions related to in vivo, which is great promise for patient access and delivery, but still a lot of science to be done. I think one thing that we're looking at here at the Emily Whitehead Foundation, the regulatory changes that can free up access. So REMS requirements changing for commercial CAR T, some movement towards delivering CAR T in the community, and people uniting to reach the 80% of CAR T patients that aren't currently being treated.
I think the positive clinical data for Huntington's disease that uniQure announced is a real breakthrough. I think it just reminds the field that there are some AAV gene therapies that can really change the outcomes for patients. So while there's been some mixed news for AAV, I think the risk benefit is really exciting in products like that.
What I've actually recognized from this industry this past year is a lot more strategic collaborations across partners. Previously, I feel like a lot of these manufacturing tool companies worked in silos. They didn't have an opportunity to build infrastructure or build connectivity, and I've seen a significant pivot towards more of that this year. I think we heard from our clients that that's what they were asking from us to do, and that is something that we've taken on. So a couple examples is I've worked really closely with groups like Lonza and Acadium, the cocoon method with the Acadium bubble separation method. We've worked and partnered with them to come up with workflow solutions. We've also seen companies like Pluristics and Technova work with us to come up with strategies for iPSC and cryopreservation. When you see companies working together as opposed to against each other, that to me is a huge step in the right direction and what we've been asking for from our clients for the last probably 5 to 10 years.
I think the biggest development is collaboration. I believe companies are starting to share, talk to each other, learn from past mistakes, and moving forward together. In the past, you could see that most of companies will think that they were very special, and they are to some extent, but their processes, I think, are somewhat similar with each other. Like I would say that 80% of, for example, manufacturing processes are the same, and 20% is the secret sauce. Everybody in the past was thinking that the whole value chain was special. And then when they started talking to each other, we realized that actually 80% is the same. So if they share, they can learn from past mistakes, advance much faster. I see that mentality has changed a little bit. Sharing is really good. Learning from each other is even better. I just see patients benefiting from not that new mindset.
I think the continued positive data coming out as the commercial autologous CAR Ts are moving up to, further in the front of the line. The data readouts continue to be really promising, as well as the continued sustained long-term remission of those original patients. So I believe as we move further up the front of the line of these therapies, we're going to see even better results and more positive results. But that means that we need to get manufacturing right and do that in a hurry.
For me, I'm most excited about the advancement in and acceptability, really, of allogeneic collections for cell and gene therapy. This advancement really helps the patients, ultimately not having to do an autologous donation, which could be very burdensome on them. They're ill at the time, so it becomes a lot easier for them. It's an off-the-shelf product, and it's more cost-effective at the end of the day. The other thing that excites me about it is, as a blood center, Stanford Blood Center to be exact, this is what we do every day. We supply patients and work with donors to supply blood products to them. That includes platelets, plasma, red cells, these types of things. And we're well positioned to have this on the shelf and provide it to many patients in need. The other thing I'm excited about is this ultimately helps the patients of tomorrow who are in need, and blood centers can ramp up and do this type of work.
It's an interesting question. I mean, some might say the mark to, downgrade of investor enthusiasm in cell and gene therapy, but I'm more of an optimist than that. So I think whereas last year was marked by some particular enthusiasm around early clinical data that we've seen in autoimmune disease, this year I think we've seen some similar enthusiasm around in vivo therapeutics, as well as iPSC. Both clinical milestones and sort of corporate commercial deals, right? Of course, both of those are quite attractive to the biopharma sector, perhaps easier for them to swallow and adopt into their business models than the ex vivo cell therapies that have seen, success so far.